So I have a small little crackpot theory that I want to share right now. So we see that the Seraphim are rebelling on Egghead Island, and to me, it's absolutely no coincidence that every single Seraphim who is here has a connection to the Straw Hats, and those who aren't here have been defeated by Luffy. If we are looking at the starting seven warlords, if you remember at the beginning of the arc when the Straw Hats were being attacked by the giant shark in the ocean before Lilith showed up, she had this line and she was like, perhaps overriding primal desires is simply impossible back in, yeah, I think it was chapter 1062. Yeah, I think it was 1062. And I think what that line is saying is like, you can't 100% like take something's freedom away from it. You can't make something do exactly what you want 100% of the time. And that's a pretty big idea that the Seraphim themselves follow. So, what I think is happening right now is that they're just rebelling because the Seraphim have already grown to that point to where they're able to just break out of Vegapunk's orders and sort of just do whatever they want. I think this whole arc kind of has the idea of just like breaking free of what people tell you to do and that sort of idea. Like, we already see this a little bit with Lucci and Kaku and how we see Lucci asking questions that people tell him that he shouldn't be asking, and we also see how Kaku is just, well, he's acting a bit more like Luffy to a degree and stuff. Not entirely, but both of them are completely different than how we previously saw them. And I think it's no coincidence that Kaku, Lucci, and Luffy all have Awakened Zone Devil Fruits, and all of them simultaneously have just this random shift in personality to the point to where this idea of just breaking free and doing whatever you want is being shown through all three of these characters, or at least it already has been shown through Luffy throughout the entire series, but now we're getting this with Kaku and Lucci because their devil fruits are awakened. I think it was Vegapunk who said, oh, that zone awakenings are different because it makes the mind of the user different. So I think this is what's happening already, of course, with Lucci and Kaku, and I think the same thing is happening with the Seraphim, even though they aren't zone devil fruit users themselves. So I think that the Jinbei Seraphim is the one that's taking out all of the cameras. This one, I think this makes a little bit of sense because like he could just swim through like the walls. Like I think maybe the awakened ability of the swim fruit would allow you to just swim through anything, like literally just like phase straight through objects, which would be a pretty broken ability, but it would be interesting. Or he could just swim up the walls and stuff, and he would pretty much be able to get around the fastest. So they would be able to take out the cameras because we see that. I think we see that one of the transponder snails that is broadcasting the feed to Shaka, that one is on the ceiling, which means that the only person who could probably get up there to take it out would be someone who could get up there. And I think that it would be the Jinbei Seraphim because he could swim on the walls and just like swim up there and take it out if he wanted to. Another piece that I want to point out is that I think there's a part where we see Frankie is looking at the Boa Hancock Seraphim S Snake, and she doesn't attack him back and stuff. And yes, she does. She did just attack them with a laser beam right there, but I think that might just be because that's really her only method of attack, with the exception of her devil fruit, which is still strange. But I don't know. I just think that she was mostly after York. I mean, not York. Lilith and Pythagoras' head because they were just in the same spot. So of course, Frankie and Usopp just got caught in the crossfire. And then of course, the last piece that I have is that at the end of the chapter, Zoro's like, oh, they were gunning for CP0. So clearly, Zoro was in the same room as them, and they didn't go for Zoro. They were trying to go for CP0 and shit, which is really interesting. I also find it, once again, no coincidence that the two Seraphim who encounter Luffy and Zoro are the Mihawk and Kuma Seraphim. What I think this means is that, well, I mean, of course, you know, Mihawk's connection to Zoro, and of course, Kuma has some sort of idea of Luffy because, of course, Kuma's in a revolutionary army, and he knows that Luffy is Dragon's son. So, of course, those four being there in that sequence just is no coincidence whatsoever. And also, like I said, this all ties back into each of the Seraphim that are currently here having some sort of connection to the Straw Hats. So the Jinbei Seraphim taking out the cameras also makes a little bit more sense because he wouldn't want to fight the crew directly. And if your idea, or if your counter to this is that, oh, well, if he's just a kid, he wouldn't know who the whole crew is. Well, if they took the memories, or at least some of the DNA from Jinbei from before the time skip, then of course he would know Luffy's whole crew, because of course he knew Luffy back then. Since I'm here and since I'm talking about the Seraphim, I want to go ahead and just get off another little small crackpot theory. I don't think that they made Seraphim for Buggy, Law, and Weevil. I think it would be interesting if they made one for Ace, but for the other three, I don't see that happening. Like, if Weevil is revealed to be a clone of Whitebeard, then why would they turn around and make another clone of him? Like, it would just be a worse copy that's of a worse copy and stuff. I also imagine that the Doflamingo, Crocodile, and Moria Seraphims aren't here because they could lead to interesting reveals, and like I said, they're already rebelling against the government, which is why they're going after CP0 and Vegapunk. And if those three Seraphim were here, Doflamingo, Crocodile, and Moria, they would just try to fight Luffy. Like I said, they're the only ones who were defeated by Luffy that aren't here right now. And when I talk about interesting reveals for the other three Seraphim that aren't here, some people already theorize that Doflamingo has some sort of special eyes that tie him to Imu-sama, so I guess a child Seraphim could confirm that, and many people also believe that Crocodile could be a woman, so another Seraphim could also just confirm that as well. There is one more reveal that I think could possibly come from a Crocodile Seraphim, but I'll bring that up in a second. Let me actually bring up something else real quick. You could think that the point I'm eventually getting to is that since the Seraphim are going against the government and not the Straw Hats, that the Straw Hats will end up befriending the Seraphim and taking them on the ship, because, I mean, why would they just leave them on Egghead? And I can see that being an issue for a lot of people. Of course, a lot of people have said that, like, if all of the Vegapunks, including the satellites and just the main Stella body, go with the Straw Hats, and there's already going to be the ship's just going to be completely bloated. So imagine what, like, 4 more Seraphim and then fucking Stussy and then also Bonnie at the same time. Like, that's just going to be too much. So what I think is probably going to happen is that, I don't know, maybe the satellites might still die and just the main body's Vegapunk is going to go with them. I think that's probably what's going to happen. Something might happen to Stussy. She might, I don't know, she might turn tail again, which I think might happen because if the Gorosei member, Jay Garcia Saturn, is coming, then he can just make the Seraphim go back to his side and also probably just make Stussy go back to his side as well. And that's probably how they can just make it to where, oh, okay, cool, the ship won't be that bloated now. So maybe all the satellites die and only the main Vegapunk goes with them. The Seraphim stay with the Gorosei and Kizaru and stuff. And I can even probably imagine Garcia killing Sentomaru just to show how evil he is. I think that would actually be pretty interesting. Okay, so just to round this out and conclude this whole little crackpot theory, I just want to go back to the only part of the theory that I think could be a little bit irky, and it's the fact of, like, it's also why I don't think that they're going to make clones of, like, people like Law and Buggy, is because, well, I mean, just think about it for a second. If they, like, Vegapunk was already able to copy Boa Hancock's, Senior Pink's, and Kuma's Devil Fruit, and shit. We even see it on, I think we also see it on the Mark III Pacifistas as well. So the question is, like, alright, like, if he could just copy someone like Law's Devil Fruit, I feel like that would just deflate a lot of tension in the story. Like, if he could just flat out copy Law's Devil Fruit, then without question, Imu-sama and the Gorosei would just be like, hey, copy the Op Fruit so we can just use its power with the ancient treasure of Marijois and stuff. Maybe that's probably already happened. Maybe they don't need to technically do that since Imu-sama is already the king of the world and he already has the power to erase people, but I don't know, it still feels strange and stuff. And also, if they do just end up copying Law's Devil Fruit, then it also just means that I feel like his place in the story also becomes a little invalidated because, like there would just be another person walking around with this already insanely strong Devil Fruit. You can also make that same sort of statement for Kuma's Devil Fruit and Boa Hancock's Devil Fruit, but I don't feel like those are so world-changing in the same way that Law's Devil Fruit has been seen as world-changing. It also brings me to another point about a Crocodile Seraphim because, like I said, many people have also theorized that Crocodile might be a child of Whitebeard. He might be Whitebeard's son. And it's like, okay, cool. If you were able to make a copy of Stussy, this former member of the Rocks. And if Weevil is a failed clone of Whitebeard, probably because they didn't really have anything to go off of, then I think it would be interesting if they were like, okay, cool, we got this crocodile seraphim, and he has like Whitebeard's DNA. Why don't we just make a Whitebeard seraph? I mean, why don't we just make a make a Whitebeard seraphim or make a Whitebeard clone off of that? Like, yeah, that would actually be pretty interesting, and I think that would be something that the government would take into effect. I think the real reason why I want this theory to happen is because I just don't think it'd be really interesting to have like another traitor plot twist right after we just had one in Wano. I mean, like always with One Piece, I would love to be 100% wrong and have something interesting happen, but I just feel like this would be retreading the same ground a bit too quickly. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Tell me what you think in the comments.